Podcast.
Touchdown Ram! Recovered by the Chargers. Touchdown UCLA!
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front!
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, Santa Barbara, wherever you are listening, and welcome to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network, the Believe Podcast Network, and live on 1090, the mightier ESPN Radio. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Got a great show for you today. Huge Rams playoff divisional matchup in Tampa. Playoff football, baby, and we're going to get all into it. Joining me here in just a few minutes, Sosa Kremenjas, formerly of Locked On Rams, now with Underdog Fantasy, talking all thing Rams. And then at the bottom of the hour, to further preview this game, going to be joined by Evan Wanish and Rhett Matthew of the Cannon Fire podcast to, give us some perspective on this Tom Brady-led Buccaneers team. It's going to be a great show. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Hope the week has been good for you and the weekend will be better. Today's show brought to you by our friends at TickPick. Any ticket purchases you need, whether you're going to Tampa for the Rams game, going out here in LA to a Lakers game, a Kings game, a Ducks games, whatever it may be, TickPick has you covered, and there's zero fees when you use our link, tickpick.com/LAFB. It'll be in the description below if you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcast platform. So make sure anytime you're purchasing a ticket for a sporting event or an entertainment event, you go to tickpick.com/LAFB. That's tickpick.com/LAFB. The price you see is the price you get, zero fees, competitive. I mean, it's the same price as you'll see on StubHub or Ticketmaster, but it ends up being cheaper because you're not paying fees. It's a no-brainer. Tickpick.com/LAFB. All right, with that being said, let's just jump right into it. Here's my guy, Sosa Kremenjas. All right, Rams fans, what's going on? Welcome in again to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network, live on AM, the mightier ESPN 1090 radio. And joining me, been on the show before, a good buddy of mine. You know him well, formerly of Locked On Rams, now the big dog at Underdog Fantasy, my man Sosa Kremenjas. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, my friend. It's good to be back. Definitely missed the podcasting game. I will say that. It feels familiar, though, and I like it. So it's been fun. Everything's good. And obviously the Rams are doing well, so that does kind of have the cherry on top there. So everything's good, my friend.
I love it. I don't know how much, because I don't know how much into your background you were a guest, but I quietly take credit for your podcasting game, because I remember you came on my show before you're with PFF, before you're with Locked On. This was like probably almost 2 years ago now. Had you on, we kind of were talking Rams, and then shortly after that, you got picked up by Locked On, got huge. Everyone was listening to your show, so I take a small bit of credit for your podcasting career.
Yeah, you got to take some credit, man. It was crazy how it kind of all unfolded. Definitely never did it before as a host and things like that. So that was obviously unique and different.
Mm-hmm.
But the experience was great. It was super fun. Obviously, I miss it. I wish I could still do it, but it's in good hands now. They finally got a new host. I think, it's good timing, I guess, with hopefully the Rams winning this week. I'm fairly confident. I will say that.
Yeah, me too, which we're going to get on to it. And just really quick, you don't have to go till I know we talked a little bit before air, but everyone listening to my show knows who you are, follows you. Everyone loves you on Rams Twitter. So just the new gig, talk to everyone what you're doing at Underdog Fantasy. There's new opportunities, and we're super pumped for you, super proud of what you've done. So just let all the listeners know kind of what you're up to that haven't been reading all your posts on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah. So it's really similar, like I was just saying to you, to Roto World. We're doing a lot of injury updates, a lot of transaction alerts and updates like that, guys being waived and signed, which I'm sure we're going to get into a lot more here in a few months with free agency and all that stuff rolling around. A lot of back end stuff, a lot of blurbing, like a lot of like fantasy information, that kind of stuff. And then I get to write on the side as well. And fingers crossed, hopefully that kind of get some space to maybe, dive back into the podcasting game. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure. kind of, in between times right now. The season's sort of ending. We're trying to get into the off season and then back into the season next year. So I got some plans. I can't divulge fully into them because I don't know what's going to happen just yet. But everything's been good. Everything's been great, actually, and having a real fun time.
Awesome, man. We're super pumped for you. And like I said, proud of what you've built and, one of the hardest working guys out there. So it's definitely deserved. So good job. Hats off. But looking at this Rams team, first, let's look back a little bit. I talked obviously throughout the week about this big win, but I mean, against the Cardinals, 34-11, pretty much dominant in all phases, coaching included on both sides, on all three phases. Were you surprised the Rams were so dominant, or was it one of those? Because I talked a little bit about that Niners loss was so gut-wrenching, but it kind of came at the perfect time as like a wake-up call. And then they came out and kind of showed that. So were you surprised by the dominant win, or were you kind of expecting that?
I went into that game really confident. So I'm going to say I wasn't surprised at all. I thought the Rams were going to win by double digits. Not that it was going to be, one of the best games I've probably ever seen under the Sean McVay era. That was straight dominance. I mean, the Cardinals never felt like at any point in that game, especially when it was within reach, like they had a chance. Like, never mind, they couldn't get yardage here. They stood no chance at all from kickoff. So I wasn't necessarily surprised. I just thought the Rams were way more talented, a much better roster, had way more experience in the playoffs. And then, like you mentioned, the San Fran loss. You could look at it both ways. It sucked to lose, obviously, a game that you should have won, and to a team that now you've lost 6 straight to. But at the same time, it really felt like a good wake-up call, like you said. That you kind of get into that next week really fired up, I feel like. And not necessarily that they would have lost that game had they beat San Fran, but, it kind of gets everyone angry and puts them on edge there. So there's a positive to that as well. Not surprised personally. I really thought they were just way better of a football team. And especially when you look at the Cardinals, since they lost DeAndre Hopkins, not been the same. I mean, they've been really, really bad offensively. Going into that game, I think the Rams were 5-1 in their last 6, Cardinals 1-4 in their last 5. So you're looking at two teams on, opposite ends of the spectrum there. Wasn't surprised at all. And I sort of expect a somewhat similar performance this week. Not, straight dominance like that, but I do think the Rams have a good shot, to go into Tampa and upset Tampa, I guess, because they are considered the favorite.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I felt the same way about that Cardinal game. I don't like, coming on here and running laps or anything, but my score prediction was 34-13. So I was pretty damn close. 34-11 was the final. But yeah, I felt confident. I just think, everyone was talking about Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford's, 0-3 playoff record in whatever 13 seasons it's been. And to me, though, it's like, well, this team as a whole has, veteran leadership, has playoff experience. Sean McVay has playoff experience. Kyler Murray had 0. Cliff Kingsbury had 0. Like, most of that roster had 0. Vance Joseph had 0. And so I just think all that stacked up. And when you have a running game where you're able to run the ball 38 times, that certainly helps take the pressure off a guy like Matthew Stafford.
Yeah. And the thing that's weird is, we, I guess, are part of the media as well. Yeah. We like to pit, weird things against each other. The game was not Matthew Stafford against Kyler Murray, which is what everyone made it out to be. I mean, Kyler Murray was going to have to go against that D-line and against Jalen Ramsey and against all these guys. And Stafford was not going to have to do that, right? Like, you're looking at a Cardinals defense that's not on par with the Rams defense. So as much as we like to bring up the 0-3 in playoffs or Kyler Murray first game in the playoffs, and it is interesting, they're good talking points, they really had no bearing on each other really at the end of the day. And I think that's probably why we look at Stafford coming away with such a dominant game and Murray, one of the worst probably playoff games we've ever seen from a quarterback. I mean, he was bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. In terms of just playoff game, I mean, at one point or in the first half, Odell Beckham Jr. had more passing yards. So
that was actually into the second quarter and actually after halftime, I think a quarter way of the third quarter, I think.
Yeah, they didn't have, I don't think they were 3 and out the entire first quarter, and he had like negative. Yeah, it was that. Let me ask you that too, then, before we get into it, because this will be important for the Tampa game. But the defense, who, I don't know, I listen to your show as much as I can, and I know you're not as low as other people. I think I'm higher than most people with the defense overall in totality, and Raheem Morris obviously, gave up some big plays against the Niners, that last drive, 1.5 minutes. But I just thought there was still good pieces there. And they come out this week, and I know, the Cardinals have, you mentioned it, lost 4 of the last 5 coming into the game, but still you have a dynamic offense. James Conner was back from injury, still a little banged up, but he's back. They had, some good receiving pieces. I know DeAndre Hopkins out, but they still have a lot of weapons there. And this defense was just lights out dominant. Schematically looked great. You get playoff Von Miller. The secondary looked good. I'll ask you this, who on that defensive front, not named Jalen Ramsey or Aaron Donald, were you most impressed with in that huge win?
Yeah, like you mentioned, there was a lot of guys that played well. I mean, you could pick anyone you wanted in that game and they played well, right? In terms of, the safety position, I think you got to give those guys their due. I mean, you talk about losing Jordan Fuller, I'm guessing for the rest of the year, Taylor Rapp out in that game. You were missing your 2 starting safeties, and you have to go sign a guy who hasn't played football in 2 years. He comes into the team, and 3 days later, he's playing 35% of the defensive snaps. That's absurd. And they gave up nothing. I mean, they gave up nothing all game, which is crazy to say. So I definitely want to give a shout out to those guys: Terrell Burgess, Nick Scott, Eric Weddle, for having that trio back there. And then, like you mentioned, I mean, you got your guys up front that all dominated. I think Von Miller had one of his best games as a Ram. Been really quietly coming on to the scene here. I mean, you're talking about 6 sacks in his last 5 games, and it feels like they're always coming at important times, right? You look at the Baltimore Ravens game a few weeks ago, San Fran, even though they lost, he started that last drive with a sack. Like, that should have been the game there. So this guy, I knew this was part of the reason why they go to get him, right? You're not looking at Von Miller for week 9. You're looking at him for right now, 3rd and 11, 80 seconds. I was going to say 1 minute and 37 seconds left in the game to go make that sack. That's what you brought him in here for. And it feels like he's really starting to heat up at the right time. He's coming off a dominant game, not just as a pass rusher too. I mean, this guy is arguably the best run stuffing edge in football. Like, he's that complete and that good.
Yeah, he's I was so happy when they were able to get him and what he brings in this playoff atmosphere. And now as we shift to Tampa, the last time Von Miller played Tom Brady in the playoffs, I was at that game, AFC Championship game. Von had 2.5 sacks, was absolutely dominant. Him and DeMarcus Ware just wreaking havoc. The defense, I think the final, they gave up like 17 points total in that game for a very dominant New England offense at the time. So I'm expecting that again this week, hopefully, especially with some injury news, which we'll get to in a second. But expectations just off the bat, I think this matchup's great. Obviously, it's playoff Tom Brady. You can never bet against him. I get that. But the Rams coming in as a 3-point dog. How do you like their chances in this one?
I agree. I really like how the Rams stack up here. I mean, when we were looking at it last week, watching those games, I'm thinking to myself, the Rams are going to win this game, I'm pretty sure, before they even played. And you don't want to go to Green Bay. So that's, what you're trying to avoid. You're really hoping for San Fran to win, or, the Eagles to somehow upset the
which was so hard to root for, by the way. So hard to root for the Niners.
Certainly.
But yes, in terms of the Rams playoff, I agree with you.
For sure. Yeah. I was looking at it like a long game. I don't care about the next round and try to get San Fran. I hope San Fran wins again. I want the Rams to stay out of Lambeau as much as possible here. So if San Fran can win again, that is ideal for the Rams' chances. But I feel good. I really do. I think they match up well, like you mentioned. Yes, it is Tom Brady. I get it. And I even posted on Twitter, like, you want to stay out of Lambeau and away from Aaron Rodgers, and the consolation prize is Tom Brady. It's not exactly, the best thing ever, but we knew this was going to be the case. Before the season started, we talked about Green Bay, Tampa, and the Rams as 3 of the final 4 teams. Didn't know the rest, but we knew that was probably going to be the case, and here we are. So you got to knock off one of them to get to the Super Bowl, and I feel good about the matchup. You talk about that offensive line in Tampa, quite banged up right now. We're going to find out how healthy are these guys. Can they actually play? And then the defensive line for the Rams. Of course, these teams did play in week 3. The Rams dominated the Bucs that game. And since then, the Bucs lose Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin. The Rams gain Von Miller, So you're talking about 2 teams that are kind of going in different directions in terms of their personnel. I feel good. And I know it's going to be tough going against Tom Brady, going to Tampa, playing away. But I think they match up probably best with the Bucs compared to everyone else left in the NFC.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at, I think Sean McVay is 4-1 against Bruce Arians overall, back when Arians was with Arizona before he retired. And then Raheem Morris also, like, very familiar with this Tampa Bay team, being with the Atlanta Falcons before coming. So the familiarity is there. Obviously the last 2 wins against Tampa Bay and Tom, I think, are huge. 1 in Tampa, 1 at SoFi. Now we go back to Tampa. So, I mean, those are just numbers and odds. You got to still play the game and line up on the gridiron for 60 minutes. But when you look at the defensive front against the offensive front, and there's the chance at this point that, the center and Tristan Wirfs on the outside, Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs are both out potentially. I personally think Jensen will play. Tristan Wirfs is looking not very good, in a walking boot. If he even does play, it's going to be probably like Andrew Whitworth last week, a little gimpy. Yeah. So who do you on this front? And then we can go backwards to there. But who to you on this front? I'll give mine after. Is like the key player in order to really throw Brady off his game?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is Aaron Donald, right? You talk about a guy that can actually take over games and does it consistently. And part of the reason why I go with Aaron Donald and not someone else is, yes, everyone's going to say Aaron Donald. I get that too. But Tom Brady is a master manipulator, right? In the pocket, this guy, he's not mobile. He's probably runs like a 5.7 40 at this point. He's slow as can be, but he is really good at maneuvering the pocket. Like, he's made a career out of understanding where he can step up, when he should flood, and leave the pocket and stuff like that. So edge pressure is great. Any kind of pressure is great, but this guy knows how to climb a pocket. So while Von Miller and Leonard Floyd might win on the outside, which is great too, this guy can still step up and into his throw. So that's one area of concern there. And then you look at the second thing here, and the second reason why I pick Aaron Donald. Tom Brady and the Bucs right now, and with that offensive line, and you look back to that last week's game against Philly, I think they're going to go with this really quick, tempo, rhythm type of offense, 3-step drops, get it out quick, and put the ball in the hands of your playmakers, try to get them, some yards after the catch. I don't think it's going to be, 7-step drops, hold the ball for 5, 6, 7 seconds, try to go downfield. I think it's going to be a lot more quick game kind of stuff. And I think the Rams are going to be happy to try and let them do that. And the easiest way to disrupt that is, win up the middle. So I think it's Aaron Donald, and I definitely have a lot of those guys circled. I'm sure you might have someone else, but for me, Aaron Donald is the one guy that can really make them adjust their game plan here and have to go to something else and really make Tom Brady uncomfortable, because this is not Russell Wilson or Kyler who's going to do the most damage outside the pocket. This is a guy who wants to step up into the pocket. So if you can stop him from doing that, you probably got a pretty good chance at silencing that offense.
Yeah, and Aaron Donald's the best in the business to do it. So I'll just throw out a different name, because I agree, Aaron Donald, I mean, it's basically every game you can pencil him in. But I think Greg Gaines is a huge key to this also, because in the middle, it's the same reasoning. Yeah. The way you beat Tom Brady is pressure up the middle, which makes him not be able to step up and forces him to move to the side. And guess what? Then you have Leonard Floyd and Von Miller waiting on the side. And if Von Miller's going up against the backup tackle, look out. That's going to be fun. When you look at that 2015 game I talked about with the Broncos against the Patriots, and obviously Von Miller was Von Miller, like his speed off the edge was unparalleled. DeMarcus Ware also, I think, had 2 sacks in that game. But you look at Sylvester Williams, Malik Jackson, and Derek Wolfe there in the middle. And it was really, they were the unsung heroes forcing Brady to be able to step up. So A'Shawn Robinson, Greg Gaines, Aaron Donald, all equally important. I just like big Greg Gaines to have a big one, because how good has he been, man? Greg Gaines, I mean, A'Shawn, take nothing away from Sebastian Joseph Day, because how good he's been for this team over his career so far. But Greg Gaines stepped in and he's been lights out.
Honestly, it's absurd at this point how much talent they harbor on that defensive line. It's crazy to me. You lose Sebastian Joseph Day, who I was saying at the time was a top 2 run stuffer in football. Yeah. And, you're probably concerned thinking about, this guy is so good to what they do. And then Greg Gaines comes out of nowhere and he develops, and he's probably every bit as good, if not even better at this point. Like, he's probably as good of a run stuffer at that nose tackle spot. And then you talk about being able to actually chip in as a pass rusher too. It's crazy. And I wish we got to see them together, because I don't know how you could possibly run against that. And that's why I like your pick too, as well, for Greg Gaines. I mean, part of it is to rush the passer. The other half is to stop the run, right? You want to get these guys in long down and distances, and they want to run the football too. So he's been outstanding. I mean, it's shocking to see how quickly he's developed. And I guess it's good timing too, because you look ahead, in 2 months, Sebastian Joseph Day is a free agent. So, if there's one guy that can help replace that, it's definitely Greg Gaines.
Yeah, that's the Rams formula, right? They get their stars, they draft late deep and let them develop, and everyone's like, man, when's this guy going to pan out? And then they do right at the right time. So, also drafting Bobby Brown, who I still think is going to be really good for this team, just obviously can't get on the field because of the depth there at the defensive line, and Ernest Jones on the practice squad. So not Ernest Jones, Ernest Brown. I remember that we had this conversation when they did the draft. There's too many Ernest and Browns. But the secondary, is, I think it's been up and down overall. Your guy, Darius Williams, great player. I think he's, had a solid season, probably not quite as much as the expectations were after last year, but overall, I think being good. But what's your expectation on the back end as we see again, at this point, Taylor Rapp still in the concussion protocol, can be available Sunday. We'll see. But at this point, as of this recording, not. So again, it's going to be Terrell Burgess, Nick Scott, with Eric Weddle getting playing time. I remember I was on shows all week last week, and everyone's like, is this guy actually going to play? And you're like, we didn't really know. And the dude played, like you said, like 30% of snaps. So he will be out there. So how do you like the prospects against, Jalen and against Mike Evans? obviously Gronk, OJ Howard. They still have talent with Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson. So I know no Chris Godwin, I know Antonio Brown, but this is still a dynamic receiving core. How do you like the prospects of our secondary against them?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I don't think the concern on my end is talent versus talent, because I do think that the Rams have enough talent to stop these guys and to cover them well. You talk about Jalen Ramsey on Mike Evans, Darius Williams on Scotty Miller maybe, or a Tyler Johnson, depending on where they're lined up. Which, I do think the Rams have the edge in terms of the talent there. The one concern I have is how are they going to go about it schematically? Because you don't really want to play a ton of man against Tom Brady. I think he's going to be able to diagnose that really quick pre-snap and really make you pay for it. But at the same time, you're going to have to mix and match things. I think you're going to have to play a lot of zones and rotate, pre-snap, post-snap, try to confuse him as much as possible, make him hold on to that ball as much as possible, and then try to get, home with 4 guys up front or 5 guys with the blitz. But my concern is, how soft are they going to play? Because I feel like they're really going to want to take a cautious approach here. And like I mentioned, Tom Brady, I think, is really happy to dink and dunk his way up a field. I've seen him do it, 20 plus years now. So he'll happily take that, whatever you give him. And so that is a concern of mine. In terms of the talent, I think the Rams are going to be perfectly fine on the back end. The one other thing, I guess, to mention here is the injuries, right? You look at David Long, how healthy is he going to be in this game? Dante Dion, is he going to play in this one? And after that, you don't really have all that much left. So I think they stack up well, talent for talent. But I'm definitely interested to see how Raheem Morris is going to go about it schematically.
Yeah. And we didn't even mention Ernest Jones. They just designated off they are. So don't know for sure if he's playing, but hey, that's at least another piece that can be in there with Travon Howard, who I think has played phenomenal in his stead. And Troy Reader obviously is a mixed bag among the fan base, but has played well at times, especially against the Cardinals. That played very well, forced that pick 6. So jumping over to the offense, let me get your take first. Cam Akers, man, this guy is like built among the gods, like stone and brawn, and what he's been able to do and come back. Just talk to me about Cam Akers and A, the amazement of him being back, but B, how much he means to this offense, because I think you can see why Sean McVay was so excited going into the year and the role that they had planned for Cam Akers. And when he went down, I know it was talked about, man, it's a big loss, but I think we realize now it was a much bigger loss than we all thought, because just seeing him now in this essentially one game, I know he played a little bit against San Fran, but this was basically his coming out party. You can see how important he is. So what's your thoughts on Cam Akers?
Yeah, coming away from that game, I think he's a special talent, and I don't say that often. I really reserve that word. So, man, you just see it, right? We've watched it all season. They went from Darrell Henderson to Sony Michel to, we've seen little flashes here from Jake Funk, all these guys. And now you're starting to see, what the difference is between a okay running back, average running back, a good running back, to a, top 60 pick, top 50 pick, elite type running back. Like, there is a difference here. And I know a lot of the analytics nerds, and I said this on Twitter, they're going to hate me for it. They all hate that opinion. Running backs don't matter. They don't open their own holes, right? I get that the O-line is super important here, but at the end of the day, there's a difference between a guy that will take, 5 yards that's blocked for him versus a guy that's going to take the 5 yards that's blocked for him, make 2 guys miss, and then go get 17 yards of his own. And I think Cam Akers does that much better than everyone else on this roster. You've seen the last game. So explosive, so fast, so much acceleration. He was running mad. I mean, you did not want to get in that guy's way. He was running tough, really good at evading tacklers, really good hands. I know he dropped that long pass, but still trying to get that chemistry down, I think, with Matthew Stafford. It was a little bit behind too. So another dynamic weapon for this offense. And I said, when this guy can get healthy, and he's healthy now, it adds another layer to this offense, just more concern for defenses. So I think it's huge. I mean, it's crazy that he's that fast and that, full speed, I guess, 5-6 months after an Achilles tear. You wouldn't even expect that 18 months after an Achilles tear, but oh man, it's crazy. And you've seen, I think, a lot of the aggression, physicality that he probably felt for the last 6 months. He's sitting on the sidelines watching his guys all go out there and win and throwing up crazy numbers with Matthew Stafford. It felt like he really wanted to make those guys pay and punish them for that time off. So it's been outstanding. I can't wait to see what he's going to do this week.
It reminded me of all of us normal folk in the year of lockdown, and then finally getting to go to the bar with the boys, and you just throw back like 18 cold ones because you're like, I'm unleashed. It's ready. It's time. That's what he looked like. And you could just see the vision. You could see the vision in between the tackles too, which I think is so huge, because there was times it looked so bottled up and he turns into 7 yards. You're like, I didn't see that coming. So in this game, Tampa has a great rush defense. I think they may have finished first in the league, or they're top 5. So very hard to run the ball against them. I mean, we have a guy 310 pounds like Vita Vea. Yeah, good luck. So going to be tough sledding for Sony Michel and Cam Akers. Do you see the Rams using Cam Akers maybe in a different way than just running between the tackles? Whether it's, I know we use jet sweeps and stuff with receivers as well, but just how do we get Cam Akers more involved if the run game is only, allocating 3 yards a carry?
Yeah, I think that's one of the concerns for me here offensively is how one-dimensional are they going to make you? Because like you mentioned, that run defense is really, really good, and their linebackers are the best duo in football right now, Levante David and Devon White. So it's going to be hard, and I don't expect him to go out there and run for, 5-6 yards per carry. I don't think that's going to happen. But like you mentioned, there's other ways to get this guy involved. And I think the Rams have to do, what they can to try and get the ball in his hands out in space versus these guys, because you're not going to be able to run the ball probably for the most part against these guys. So if you're trying to get Cam Akers involved, I'm looking back to last week, get Cam Akers flexed outside the numbers, let him go beat some linebackers and safeties in space. He killed Jordan Hicks on that vertical route. I mean, that should have been a 50-yard catch, maybe a 50, 60-yard touchdown, to be quite honest with you. So we've seen him do that. You see him go, on that little trick play as well. OBJ kind of finds him for that 40-yard gain too. This guy's got hands. He can run routes. He's got speed. Get him the ball, in screen situations. Get him the ball out in space as a dump-off option. You even saw, again, last week, it was, I think, 3rd and 9. Probably in the third or fourth quarter. I think it was in the fourth quarter to be exact. Stafford finds him as a check down, and Akers makes a guy miss in space, gets 15 yards. It does get called back for a holding call, but that was an easy conversion, right? You want to get your playmakers the ball in space. And I think that's kind of the goal here. This is another layer to your offense, super explosive, one-on-one in space against a defender. I'll take that every time with Cam Akers. So I think you got to involve him in the passing game. And I think that's one thing that Stafford does really well. He knows, where his checkdowns are and when to find them. So I don't think, they're going to have issues getting the ball in his hands. I'm just concerned about the running game, like you mentioned too.
Yeah, it's one of those where I've talked the first matchup that, you still have to stick to it. Even if you're only averaging like 2.5 yards per carry, I still want to get in that 20+ range because it just keeps the defense honest. It forces them to be physical, and then eventually down the line, it'll open things up potentially for a play action, a bootleg, to break something. So two more for you, Big Sosa. I'll get you out of here. Sosa Kremenjas of Underdog Fantasy joining me, talking Rams, Bucks. Okay, let's talk about OBJ for a second. How much he's come into this offense, which I think most of us Rams faithful that cover the team expected this. We knew it was going to take a little bit of time, but we know the talent he is. I think most of us knew that he would assimilate and fit fine with this roster, with this coaching staff, with this culture that we have here with the Rams. Because they've proven year in year that star players come in here and everyone gets along. I know everyone talks about the concern, and it's like, well, they've been proving it since McVay's been here. So how fun has it been for you to see OBJ become the OBJ we know? I know he hasn't had that 150-yard, 2-touchdown game, but we still see the dynamic playmaking ability that he showed us back in New York, and now it's here. So how fun has it been for you? And then is there any shot that he's not in a Rams uniform next year? I think there's no way they don't lock this guy up somehow.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome to see because like you mentioned, the numbers are not up there. We all see it. We know it. We're not blind, but that was never going to be the case. He even said when I came here, I was not going to say, I demand this amount of targets. I want this amount of yards. He wanted to come play for a contender, and that's where he's at right now. And like you mentioned, you see when he's winning, and he wins often, and you see him winning in the most important areas. Last week he's winning on 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 7, and he's converting the chains or in the red zone. I mean, this is a guy that has, I think, 6 or 7 touchdowns with the Rams in like 9 games or 10 games. So those are the most money areas. I mean, he starts the game with a jump ball feed in the end zone. That was classic Odell. That was what he made his name on, going above, up the ladder, as they say, climbing the ladder and sunning a guy, mossing a guy. So it's been great to see. I mean, I think he's a genuine weapon in this offense. No, he probably won't go for 130 like you mentioned in this game. But if he's converting on 3rd down, if he's making plays in the red zone, if he's creating yardage after the catch, and I think that's one thing that the Rams still have to kind of find is how can we get the ball to this guy in space to make him create yards after the catch, because he was amazing at that in New York, taking a 10-yard slant and turning into a 70-yard touchdown. Been great. And in terms of next year, it's hard to say. I actually looked at the free agent list last night, and it is long. Oh, man, there's a lot of players on there. And I think the Rams are actually above space right now. They don't have any space. They're $5 million over. And, of course, they're going to find ways to get down. But you're talking about Brian Allen and Austin Corbett and Sebastian Joseph Day, Darius Williams, Von Miller, OBJ. That's a Pro Bowl roster, basically, right there that you have in free agents. So going to be hard, but I think for sure, like you mentioned, they're going to try to do whatever they can to bring this guy back because he brings a different dynamic to this offense. You see Cooper Kupp out there, you see Robert Woods out there, Van Jefferson, tremendous players, right? These guys are world-class players, we'll say. But you see the difference in the athleticism, right? Versus an Odell. Like, this guy moves differently. You can see it in the routes. You can see it in the way that he can accelerate. So I think that's a nice dynamic to have to your offense. Definitely a luxury. But when you talk about OBJ, is he happy here? Would he take a little bit of less money? I think he probably would.
I think so, yeah, and it's Los Angeles. Like, he belongs to live in LA. Like, come on, let's be real.
Yeah,
it was either New York or LA. He already had New York, didn't work out. Now he's in Tinseltown. He'll be in movies probably coming up here soon. I'm surprised he hasn't been already. So it just makes so much sense, and it's been fun to watch. And I love that the narrative can finally be squashed. That he's not like a team guy, a locker room guy. Like, it's like a relationship. It has to work for both sides. Didn't work in Cleveland. Seems to be working here. Because everyone, last thing I'll say about him is, and I talked about this in my last show, is people are like, well, yeah, it's easy to be a team guy when you're winning. It's like, well, when he got here, they were on a 3-game losing streak, and like, we're not looking good. And there was a lot of questions, and all that time he was all about just the work building. And it wasn't like, man, did I sign with the wrong team kind of thing. So I think obviously we want to see more, but I think he's proven that narrative wrong, which is nice.
I felt like that was like a media fabrication. And of course, there was probably 1 or 2 slip ups he had, like making fun of Eli Manning or something, but I mean, come on. Like, we never had any indication that this guy was a problem. And I think we all embraced him with open arms and expected the best, and it's really worked out perfectly.
Yeah. If people want to call him a problem, they should be calling Brady the same thing. Obviously, it's just when Brady wins, no one talks about that. But anyway, since we're planning this week, got to bring that up. Last one, Sos, and we'll get you out of here. Matthew Stafford. I've loved the move. I think he's been great for this Rams team. Obviously, the 17 interceptions aren't great, but that's who he is, a gunslinger. Like, he averages like 12 to 16 interceptions every year of his career. So you kind of expected that in a sense. Played well in that first playoff game. What does he need to do or not do to win this game on Sunday against Tampa Bay?
Yeah. I feel like this is an easy one. I don't want to say it, but it's an easy one. Don't turn the ball over, especially for a pick six, right? You can't have that backbreaker against Tom Brady. The other thing, I think back to that week 3 game, there were 3 long touchdowns that he could have had to Deshaun Jackson at the time, who's obviously no longer with the team, one of which they did connect on, one of which wasn't his fault. There was, a defensive tackle bearing down on him right in front of his face. He couldn't step into it, but you're going to have to be accurate. You're going to have to take your shots against these guys, I think, and be selective. You can't get a big play every time.
Yep.
And most of all, just take care of that football, because you have such a talented roster. You have such a good defense that you don't have to do it all on yourself, right? And as long as you don't throw that back-breaking pick six, you're going to have a chance to maybe hold them to 3, let's say, with your defense, or, create a turnover on your own right in terms of the defense too, or whatever the case is. So I feel like easy answer, all the games that he's thrown a pick six, they've lost or whatever. And I get that. But at the same time, as long as you do not have a back-breaking interception here that goes the other way, I feel good about your chances. An interception is not that bad. If it's an arm punt that's 40 or 50 yards downfield, so be it. That might be a good shot to take. It might just not work out in your favor. But for me, it's just, try to be accurate, try to be composed. Don't make it bigger than it is. And I know it's going to be a huge one. So there's really no way you keep your emotions out of this one. But it's for sure just take care of the football. They can't have those sack fumbles that they've had against Green Bay inside your own 10-yard line. And I hold my breath every time they're within their own 20, because I'm used to it at this point. It's like, oh my God, chaos may be happening. So just play clean. And I think if you play clean, you're going to give yourself a really good shot to come out of there with a W.
Yeah, it was so refreshing seeing him just go 13 for 17. Like, I think that is good for his, psyche too, knowing like, okay, I don't have to do it all. We just won by 20 points and I completed 13 passes. So I think that shows. And obviously they'll be going against a better team with Tampa and Tom Brady. First time ever playing him in the playoffs, obviously. So, but I agree. I think he has a good game. Just keep it clean and we'll be good to go. So Sosa Kremenjas, my man, QB's MVP on Twitter, works for Underdog Fantasy. Bro, always appreciate the time. I could talk to you all day, but we'll let you get out of here. But thanks for jumping on with me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. It's been fun to make my debut or my return here. It's been a while, so it's been good. I think the Rams will win. All right, I'll say that. That's my prediction. I think the Rams will win. I think we'll have a good weekend, but you never know. So that's why they play these games. It's going to be fun. Thank you for having me, and enjoy this game.
Give me a score quick, because I didn't even ask you that. Give me a score.
All right. I'm going to say Rams 31, Bucks 27.
Love it. 4-point game. We'll take it. Hey, that beats money line is fine anyway if the Rams win, since they're 3-point dogs. So put your money in the Rams. So thanks, man. Appreciate you as always. Welcome back to the LA Football Show. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Excited to get further into this preview. If you're looking at betting on this game, or any games this weekend in the division round, or basketball or hockey, any sport out there, we have deals for you. For all of you in betting states, we have deals with DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM. One of the DraftKings deals, bet 5, win 280 in free play. Phenomenal deals. All the links are below in the description. If you're listening on radio, head to LAFBnetwork.com. You can find it there, or go to our YouTube page, find this show, and you'll see all the links below. So if you want to bet on the game, you're in a betting state, make sure to use our promos, because you're just going to get free money to play with. Rams are -3 in this game. I like the Rams, as you'll see as we get further into this conversation, but make sure to check out those links. So without further ado, let's get into it with the Cannon Fire podcast. We are back on the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network and the mightier ESPN Radio, coming at you live. Excited to get into this full preview. We had Sosa on at the top of the hour, looking at the Rams side, and now we're looking at the Buccaneers side, Tampa Bay, and joining me, Evan Wanish and Rhett Matthew of the Cannon Fire podcast. Gentlemen, excited to get into this. Evan, what's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for. I know we've been basically a repeating guest, right? And really excited for this matchup. And it's the third time that we've been on your show.
Yeah, stoked. So, Rhett, thanks for joining me. The background looks great. You got the old creamsicle hat going, the old Buck logo. What's going on? How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Excited to talk this weekend's game with you. I mean, so much history in the postseason between these two teams, right? Like the Rams beat the Bucks twice in the NFC Championship. It's been talked about before, the Burt Emanuel catch and everything in between. I mean, all the, the primetime games that they'd had over the years, Monday Night Football in 2000 when the Bucks got their revenge. I mean, there's just so many classic moments between these two franchises, and hopefully we get a few more on Sunday, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's great you bring that up, because people forget the history between the two, because of recent, there hasn't been a lot, I would say, other than, the two regular season matchups these two teams have had. But yeah, the history is definitely there, and there's been some good classics that have gone on, and some of the great players that have gone through the Tampa organization, and obviously our defensive coordinator Raheem Morris got his start with John Gruden down there in the Tampa too. So we have become familiar with that a little bit here. So talk to me a little bit about let's just jump into this, concerns for Tampa as we kind of get in the injury or into the preview quickly, but some injury concerns on, the offensive line with Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs, which in my opinion is one of the biggest things in this matchup, in this game, when you look at this front seven for the Rams, specifically the front four in the pass rush. So what can you tell me? I'll toss it to you, Rhett, first. What can you tell me about kind of the injuries, how they're looking? If it's looking like these guys will go, just give me some updates there.
Yeah, the latest update we got today, Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs were both out there at practice. Tristan Wirfs actually walked out there, didn't appear to be limping, had his helmet on, kind of going through the motions of practice. Ryan Jensen, I think, expected to be a little bit further ahead, and I think Jensen plays. But the injuries for this Bucs team at this time of year, especially along the offensive line, that is, in my opinion, that's the biggest make or break for them this weekend, is if Tristan Wirfs is going to be ready to go, because you speak to the talent of the Rams front four, their defensive line, and not only do they have Aaron Donald, the best player in the NFL over the last 4 seasons, it feels like, they went ahead and added Von Miller too, who is a future Hall of Fame pass rusher. So, there really is no messing around. When you compare what the Bucs have done in the playoffs so far, the Philly game shouldn't have even really been a game. Let's face it. So you can't really compare the pass rush of the Eagles to the Rams. But yeah, I mean, as far as Tristan Wirfs and Ryan Jensen, it seems like Bruce Arians has made it clear it's going to be a game time decision for those guys, just like it was for a couple of players last week as well. So I'm very anxious, very, very anxious, because the biggest strength of this O-line for the Bucs these past few years has been their ability to stay consistent, right? Keep your main 5 guys up there, and Tristan Wirfs, one of the only guys in the NFL who has played every regular season snap over the last 2 seasons. Like, that goes without saying how big of a loss this would be for the Bucs if he's not ready to go, but it seems like it's up in the air right now.
Yeah. So
it's sorry.
Go ahead.
Seems like it's very, very much up in the air. Just wanted to add a quick note how Bruce Arians said, like, it may be an hour and a half before the game starts that they would know whether these two guys are going to play. And I mean, if you're going up against the Rams, who, just wanted to throw in a really quick, the last time these two teams played was week 3. Von Miller wasn't a Ram yet. So
Mm.
that matters, right? That's definitely a factor. And yeah, they're going to need at least one of them, I think. If they're going into this game without both, man, that's a tough challenge, especially with, just like Rhett said, Aaron Donald, who has been the best defensive player in football. I mean, it seems like as long as he's been in the league, really. As soon as he got in the league, it seemed like this guy just came onto the scene. So it'll be a challenge if those two guys can't go. But Bucks seem optimistic. I don't know about both, but Bucks seem optimistic. At least one of them will be out there.
Yeah, you guys know way more than me, but I feel like Jensen's probably going to be a go. Which is, I mean, the fact that he went back in the game, and then I think came out again, but it seemed like he was further along, as you mentioned, Rhett. And Evan, though, if Tristan Wirfs does not go, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's Josh Wells after him. Looked like he, got burned quite a few times against the Eagles once he stepped in. Truly, how concerning is that? Because you look at a guy like Von Miller, who probably lines up against the right tackle most of the times. If not, Leonard Floyd is no slouch either if they do rotate. Last time I talked about at the top of the hour, last time Von Miller played Tom Brady in the playoffs, AFC Championship game, 2.5 sacks, and basically wrecked that game as the Broncos went on to the Super Bowl after that. So how concerning is that if you're putting a guy like Josh Wells against a guy prolific like Von Miller?
Yeah, I mean, Josh Wells himself is actually dealing with a quad injury. Was able to practice most of this week, so it looks like he will be available if Tristan Wirfs can't go. It does look like it'll be Josh Wells. Bruce Arians actually did mention that had Josh Wells not been able to continue the game versus Philly, that they would have moved right guard Alex Kappa to right tackle, and then they would have had Aaron Stinney, who is a backup guard, play in his place at right guard. So maybe some shuffling along the offensive line there, depending on how the game goes, I think, too. But yeah, it'll be a challenge for Wells, and he struggled at times. There was times he actually looked decent on Sunday against the Eagles, but there was a few times where Ryan Kerrigan, who has not really had much success this season, really took his lunch money. And yeah, Von Miller is a much better player right now than Ryan Kerrigan is. So if Josh Wells plays and Tristan Wirfs can't go, Josh Wells is definitely going to have to be on his P's and Q's, because like you said, Von Miller has a history of wrecking Tom Brady's playoff games, and I think he has the ability to do it again.
Yeah, and Von Miller has said many times one of his favorite quarterbacks to play against is Tom Brady, just because the competition level is so high and you're going against the GOAT. You want to beat the GOAT. So he'll be ready to go. And Greg Gaines is the guy I've highlighted all week. I know everyone talked about Aaron Donald, as they should, being the best player, in my opinion, in the NFL, period, not just defensively. But at nose tackle, Greg Gaines has been dominant for this Rams team, has come in for Sebastian Joseph Day when he went down, and has just gotten better and better and better every week. And not just against the run game, which is kind of his forte, but that push up the middle, which against a Tom Brady led team is so important, because if Brady can't step in the pocket and he's forced to the side, and then guess what, on the side you have Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, that's huge. So Rhett, I don't want to keep beating this with a dead horse, but when you look at a guy like Greg Gaines and you look at that center position, Ryan Jensen, if someone else spells in him, the two guards, Ali Marpet, and how important those guard positions are, just because in my opinion, I mean, the way this game goes down is how this offensive plays, because that's how it's going to go, I think, for this offense, in my opinion. So just how important, when you look at a guy like Greg Gaines, I don't know how much you know about him, but how much can you attest to his importance in, blowing up this offensive line?
No, yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of people will say the formula to beat Tom Brady is to bring the pressure, to hit him. I mean, let's face it, that's the formula to beat 99% of quarterbacks in the NFL. If you hit them, they're definitely not going to be playing their greatest. But it just speaks to the importance of what a guy like that brings to your line of scrimmage. I mean, we have the same conversation about, Vita Vea over for the Bucs defensive line. That push up the middle to either move a guy out of the pocket, just get him uncomfortable, take away different options for him. Eventually, it's going to lead to a mistake. So, I mean, while, a position like that isn't going to be blowing up the stat sheets, no one's going to talk about the 2 or 3 sack performance he had at the end of the day. But the ability that guy in the middle of the line has to just open up doors for everybody else to feast. You talk about all the elite pass rushers on the LA roster. I mean, that just... that guy is definitely the unsung hero in that situation, but that's how important a position like that is, especially in a game like this week where, on both sides of the ball for both teams, it will be won in the trenches this week.
Yeah. Ironically enough, Vita Vea was at Washington, and then Greg Gaines took over for Vita Vea once he was drafted by the Buccaneers, and then Greg Gaines was drafted the following year by the Rams. Not 12th overall like Vita Vea, but still comes from that Washington Huskies tree. So, Evan, sticking with injuries a little bit. Leonard Fournette, I believe, has practiced since Wednesday. Haven't heard anything about Rojo. What's it looking like for your guys' running game down there in Tampa, and how important is it? I mean, I think you guys looked pretty good without those two. Granted, going against the Eagles, but I think the running game looked pretty solid with who you put back there. So, what's the thought process on that? And does it look like Fournette or Rojo could be a go Sunday?
Yeah, it does look like Fournette's on track. He looked like he was on track last week as well, so we'll have to wait and see. But it does appear that he's on track to play. I think the Bucs last week were more so being cautious. I think Bruce Arians had said like he wasn't 100%, and if he's not 100%, Bruce Arians really didn't want to put him out there. As far as Ronald Jones, it seems like he's not going to play. It seems like his ankle injury just isn't getting any really better in time to play this game. If the Bucs advance, who knows? But for this particular game, it does look like they'll get Leonard Fournette back. But you're right. The run game against Philly, it wasn't bad. Keyshawn Vaughn and Giovanni Bernard both had touchdowns, and they both did their job. It wasn't nothing spectacular, but it was enough to get the job done. Now, will they need a better performance if Leonard Fournette's in there? Probably, because this Rams team is a better team than the Eagles. So you're going to need a better performance. I look back to the week 3 matchup. Tom Brady was the Bucs leading rusher. That can't happen. If that happens again, the Bucs are going to lose this football game. So I understand, the Rams are really good at defending the run. They've been good all season. I believe they're PFF's top ranked run defense. They've been really good. And the Bucs are just going to need to find a way, whether that's Fournette, whether that's Bernard, Vaughn, whoever it may be, even Le'Veon Bell, if they choose to put him in there on some third downs, they're going to have to find a way to get these running backs involved, especially with how shorthanded the Bucs are still at wide receiver.
Yeah. So, Rhett, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to speak to the shorthandedness at wide receiver. I mean, not only have we talked about the injuries they have, the Antonio Brown meltdown against the Jets, Chris Godwin missing the rest of the season with his injury. They also have another injury this week at the receiver position. Rashad Perryman is dealing with what does he have, Evan? Correct me here really quick. Is it a hamstring? No. It's like a hip injury.
Yeah, it's like a torn muscle almost. He suffered a torn muscle. So it sounds like Perryman's not going to be able to go either. Bruce Arians had mentioned possibly John Brown stepping in there.
Yeah, so the Bucs could, they could either activate John Brown or you still have Surreal Grayson Jr., but this guy missed the first playoffs game because of injury, and he still is out there limited at practice due to a hamstring injury. So the Bucs definitely have a decision to make on their hands, and John Brown being the guy that they just signed to the practice squad, he's been on the team for 9 or 10 days at this point, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think the deadline to do that is here in a couple of hours, 4 p.m. today, if they want to activate John Brown.
Yeah, it's, a team with such talent, but they kind of got banged up at the wrong time, which was the opposite last year. So they got all healthy at the right time. We're catching their stride at the right time. And so if that running game, Rhett, doesn't get going, if the Rams are able to sustain and, play up to their ability with Donald, with Greg Gaines, Ernest Jones just got designated off the IR for the linebacking position, who's probably our best run linebacker. Traven Howard's more of a sideline guy. So if they can kind of sustain that, and the passing game, what Brady does so well is kind of in his career, it sounds disrespectful to say it, but he's very good at the dink and dunk style offense until defenses cheat, and then he throws it up over the top. It seems like they just, all those years in New England, and even now with the great talent he has in Tampa Bay, they still kind of predicate that dink and dunk, take what the defense gives us, and then we'll use it. So if the running game doesn't work, and if they have to pass it 40 plus times a game, do you like their chances in that regard? Or do you think they need to switch things up schematically in order to maybe, push the ball farther down the field?
40 plus times for Tom Brady is a little bit much. So if I'm looking at a stat sheet at the end of the game without seeing a final score and I see he threw it over 40 times, I'm assuming they lost. So that's not entirely the route that I want to go. But listen, this is also a guy who is, tied with the front runner of MVP right now. He threw 40-something touchdowns this year, 40-something last year. So if they have to go through the air, I definitely trust Brady to do it. The way that they had to do it against this Rams team in week 3, I mean, he threw for 400-something yards and only 1 total touchdown, but he was able to move the ball down the field. Granted, they were playing from behind most of the time, but I think for Brady this week, I mean, obviously getting the ball out quick is huge, but I think attacking the middle of the field and really trying to incorporate some of these tight ends a little bit more. I know the conversation has been had about Rob Gronkowski, but people aren't talking as much about guys like OJ Howard, former first-round pick for this Bucs team. Cameron Brate, who, still is eating up a little bit of cap space. I know he picked up some momentum, had some touchdowns towards the end of the regular season, but I'd like to see him get involved as well, because let's face it, if the Bucs have to pass the ball, okay, but you're going to have Mike Evans paired up with Jalen Ramsey for most of the game, I have to assume, right? And then alongside all the other wide receivers we've been talking about, there aren't necessarily any superstars that jump out to you. So I think the superstars could be in that tight end room. And I know the chances for a guy like OJ Howard getting more than 50% of the offensive snaps seems like a long shot this time of year, but I really think that's what this Bucs offense is going to have to hone in on this week.
Yeah, and Evan, you look at a guy like Mike Williams, who he's on my dynasty team. Like, he's such a talented, underrated receiver that I don't think gets enough chatter, because he's done it with not just Tom Brady. He's been superb with many other quarterbacks, which just shows, I think, how good he is. But against Jalen Ramsey, he has not been good, and not many receivers have been good against Jalen Ramsey. So, I mean, he is the best at what he does for a reason. And I agree with you, Rhett. I think he will primarily cover him, but they do use him in that star role where they move him all over the field, and they want to try to confuse Tom Brady, if that's even possible in a way. And Raheem Morris does use him differently. But so how do you, in your opinion, Evan, get Mike Evans more involved? Is it something that you need to get right out the gate, get him, 5 targets just to see how it's working? Or do you let it just kind of come to you in a way? Or do you just think they have to target other guys and say, you know what, Jalen Ramsey, Mike Evans, it's fun to talk about, but we're not going to focus on it, because I don't think they'll do it that much this game?
Yeah, I feel like the Bucs really need to find a way to get the ball in his hands. Not necessarily force feed him, but there's ways to scheme guys open, right? There are ways to get the ball in your best player's hands. And you're right, Jalen Ramsey could very well just follow him around. Ramsey's been playing inside, outside this the entire time he's been with LA, really. He's been very versatile in that matter. And it's a tough matchup, but it's a tough matchup for any wide receiver, just like you said, because Jalen Ramsey is so good. But it feels like Mike Evans is going to have to do something, because look, I mean, the Bucs last year, the Bucs played with Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, and they lost. Week 3, they played with Chris Godwin. Antonio Brown didn't play, and they still lost. It seems like, Mike Evans is going to have to step up. I mean, now you're looking at guys like Tyler Johnson, maybe Surreal Grayson. I mean, even Brashad Perryman, who's flashed, likely won't even be able to play in this game. So I think Mike Evans is going to have to find a way. Now, does that mean get over 100 yards? No, that doesn't mean that. But they're going to have to find a way to get the ball in his hands, not necessarily force feed it, because that could result in Ramsey just making a play because he's so good. You don't even want to test those waters so much, but I do think there are certain ways to be able to scheme your guys open, whether it's just quick screens. Mike Evans can do that stuff. A lot of people think he is just a guy who just runs streaks and 50-50 balls. He can do a lot more. And I think you might see that on Sunday. And if they want a chance to win this game, and then if they do advance to win the Super Bowl, Mike Evans is going to have to step up each and every game. He did last week. It's going to be even tougher this week.
Yeah, it's for me, looking at it from the lens of the Rams, what would scare me is if they do get him involved early. Because last game, I think he actually had like eight catches for like over 100 yards. Most of that came in kind of garbage time when they were down by 2 scores and just trying to play catch up. So it didn't have a huge factor. But if they can get him going and get him on the scoreboard early, because he reminds me a little bit, not to player comp too much, but Mike Williams here in LA for the Chargers. I think Evans is a more talented Mike Williams in a sense that he's, a little better route runner, probably a little quicker. But Williams in this Chargers offense, for his whole career before Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi got to LA, he was kind of used as that just like jump ball, go get it guy. And this year they really implemented it in so many different ways, and you could see how talented he truly was. So how you mentioned about Mike Evans has that ability to do that. That's what would scare me. And that's why if I'm Raheem Morris, I'm putting Jalen Ramsey on Mike Evans no matter what. Screw the star role. Just stay on Evans and shut him down. We'll worry about Rob Gronkowski, OJ Howard, Tyler Johnson, those guys with our other players. What do you think, Rhett?
And it's kind of funny about Mike Evans. His progression over the course of his career regarding what he's been asked to do in this offense has definitely, gotten a little bit smaller over the years. When you have the luxury of playing next to guys like Chris Godwin, who is a number 1 wide receiver on most teams in the NFL, Antonio Brown, who on the field is probably one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. Like, obviously, when you have those guys around you, you're going to be asked to do less. But when that happens, like, people forget about Mike Evans. And it's important to remember that, Evans said he can do all these things. There was a time where man, I remember 2014 watching the Bucs go 2-14 with Josh McCown at their quarterback, and Mike Evans was their offense, right? Like there was a time where Mike Evans was putting up 1,400 yards a season. And we said before the playoffs even started, offensively, with the injuries that they have, I mean, the defense playing the way that they have is great, and I'm sure we'll talk about them here in a second too. But for the Bucs, you know, what's going to decide how deep they go on this playoff run is how much Mike Evans can just step up and be that guy. Because when you are a number one wide receiver in the NFL, no one really cares when you're playing against Jalen Ramsey. You know what I mean? Like you still have to go out there, find ways to produce. And I hope Mike Evans is able to do that this Sunday. It's going to be tough, but he's definitely been producing a little bit more given the injuries around him and the rest of that receiver room.
Yeah, I hope not, but we'll see. It's crazy to me, guys, that Mike Evans has never had a season under 1,000 yards receiving. That is insane.
Yeah.
He does not get talked about enough as an elite receiver in this game. And I really don't understand why. He's been a guy that I've loved ever since he was at Texas A&M. And like I said, he's done it with other quarterbacks, not just Tom Brady. So he's kind of that guy that can produce no matter who's back there, kind of thing. So I think that's so important. So just impressive. And that'll be, I think, a huge storyline for this Rams defense is how they can, you know, slow him down, especially obviously you got to take the running game. I mean, there's just so many factors on your guys' offense that you have to worry about. And that's why they're in the playoffs. That's why we're in the divisional round. So yeah, Rhett, you alluded to it. I'll go to you next. You look at the Rams offense now and Matthew Stafford, who I have talked a lot on my show, who I just think this is a slam dunk trade. You know, when it first went down, I definitely thought the Rams gave up quite a lot for it, as did everyone. But just seeing what he did, you know, he had those 17 picks, had like 5 pick sixes, which is not good. But his whole career, he's averaged 12 to 15 interceptions. Like, that's just who he is. You kind of have to expect that. 41 touchdowns, so he doubled Jared Goff's output last year. Still has that big arm. He's a cerebral player. He just gets Sean McVay's scheme. He's the quarterback, not the quarterback, but the coach on the field that Jared Goff, unfortunately, just never was able to become. From you on the outside looking in, Rhett, just what's your thoughts on Stafford and how much or how little does he scare you going into this game?
He definitely scares me. When we looked at his stats at the end of the season, Evan and I both were pretty shocked to see that he had 17 on the year because he has no doubt been slinging it in that LA offense. And I know they kind of started to add up towards the end of the year as things went on, but 17, I was surprised to see, but who cares? It's the first year in a new offense. We know how Sean McVay is. But I think he's really been doing a great job with LA. I think he has them in a great position here. I'd love to, if the Bucs get eliminated this weekend, I'd love to potentially see Matt Stafford finally get some credit for being the talented guy he has been. But, the formula with the Rams, while they didn't have to necessarily give up as much to go get Brady as the Rams did Stafford, it's the same formula, right? Like you pick up all of these superstars. You guys got a disgruntled superstar wide receiver halfway through the season in OBJ, who is returning to former glory now. He's getting hot at the right time. But I think Matt Stafford's the dude. And I think this week it's obviously going to be contingent on just how much pressure the Bucs can put on him on defense, because the way that I look at this Bucs defense, and I think Todd Bowles has said this before, they are designed to try and force mistakes after a while, right? Like they're going to blitz you a lot. They have one of the higher blitz rate percentages in the NFL. I think we just talked with Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus this week. He said it's somewhere around like 43% average a game, which is, again, highest in the NFL. So they're going to blitz. But even if they're not getting there, if you can bring pressure on the quarterback, eventually try and make some mistakes. We know Stafford is capable of tossing a few picks. So I think that's what the Bucs are going to lean on. But as far as what they need to fine tune this week to, really try and slow him down, I'm not sure, man, because I'm stuck between a place of, all right, week 3, Stafford played arguably his best game as a Ram against the Bucs. I think he's going to do it next week in the divisional round. But I'm also at a place where I think he could go out there and throw 2 or 3 picks, and it could be a huge day for this Bucs defense if they're able to take advantage and, of course, not make mistakes on the other side of the ball. But I have no idea, man. I'll tell you this much, though. He is definitely getting it done for the Rams.
Yeah, it's, we talked at the top of the hour with my guest Sosa about, the biggest key for this Rams offense is just, not making the mistake. And if he cannot make the mistake, we feel pretty good about how this offense can roll. Evan, looking at your guys' defense, and I don't expect you to give X's and O's because obviously you guys don't cover the Rams, but in your opinion, what is the most important thing to stop this defense? Stop this offense, excuse me, because I think what's been exciting that not a lot of people kind of had talked about this Rams offense is that they're among the fan base, and you wouldn't know this, but there's always frustration with Sean McVay abandoning the run. But he hasn't done it as much this year as fans say. I mean, he really has been pretty dedicated to it overall for the most part. But I think what makes this offense so dangerous is they can beat you and do different things week to week. So, for instance, just looking at the first Bucs matchup, Matthew Stafford threw the ball 38 times. Looking at the first Arizona Cardinals matchup, because we'll look at the playoffs, or the second one, where they beat him. He threw the ball 30 times. Now you look at last week's wild card game, he threw the ball 17 times and the Rams ran the ball 38 times. So they can kind of come at you in different ways depending on how they schematically draw things up. So Evan, long way of asking, what do you think is most important to shut down / how does the Buccaneers defense need to shut this down, and how are capable of doing that?
Yeah, I think, a shout out to the Rams running backs. I'm a big fan of both Sony Michel and Cam Akers. Obviously, Cam Akers, a remarkable story this year. Just incredible that he's able to, come back and play meaningful football and play a lot of snaps. Like, it's not like he's just playing, a few snaps here and there. Like he's playing a lot of snaps. So both those guys, like you said, the Rams at times, have been one-dimensional under Sean McVay. I believe last year in Tampa, Jared Goff threw the ball 51 times. The Rams still won, but he threw it over 50 times. Yeah. So
not a recipe we want.
No, I don't think that's not how you win in the playoffs, right? That's not, you're not going to win many playoff games throwing the ball 50 plus times. So I mean, it is important for the Rams to have a run game. The Bucs run defense, which was criticized earlier in the week when you were looking at the Philly matchup, and I think they heard those criticisms because they came out in the Philly matchup with a lot of energy, and they shut down the number one rushing team in the NFL. Then, obviously the offense picking up 2 touchdowns, sort of forcing Philly to get away from the run, that helped. But, early on when the Eagles were trying to run it, the Bucs shut it down. So that's an important piece. As far as what the Bucs defense needs to do, it's what, Rhett had said that they do. Todd Bowles blitzes 43% of the time. You can't do that. I believe last week, Trevor actually corrected me. I didn't think the Bucs blitzed Jalen Hurts that much. Trevor said it was actually 44% that they blitzed him last week. So it was actually a little bit above. So I was like, oh my goodness.
What are you watching? Stafford, though, what are you watching?
I know. Matt Stafford has been ridiculous against the blitz this season. So this is from John Ledyard of Pewter Report. He has said when Matt Stafford has faced 5+ rushers, he has a 72% completion percentage, 1,031 yards, 14 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 8 sacks. But when he's faced 4 or less rushers, he has 66% completion percentage, 3,855 yards, 27 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and 22 sacks. So every single one of his interceptions, none of them have come against the blitz. So while Todd Bowles will not eliminate the blitz completely, that's just not him. I do think he's got to tone it down a significant margin this week, unless maybe the Bucs go up a little bit and you can take some chances, or if they're down and needed something, a splash play maybe. But it's just McVay and Stafford have been so good against the blitz this year that I just can't see a recipe for success if you're going to go out and blitz and, darn near 50% of the snaps.
Such a good point, Evan. I'm glad you bring it up because I don't think it gets talked about enough with Matthew Stafford. Everyone just looks at the interceptions and stuff like that. But what made him such an upgrade over Jared Goff, and I say all the time on my show, I never want to talk bad about Goff. What he brought to the city, this team was phenomenal. But just talking X's and O's and players, what Stafford brings is that pre-snap knowledge and able to pick up the blitz and say, okay, Jared Goff just could never do that. Last year against Miami, I don't know if you guys remember that game at all, but he had 4 turnovers, 2 fumbles, 2 picks, and all of them were against cover zeros where it was clear what was going to happen, and he just didn't pick it up and just sat back there in a 5-set drop, whereas Stafford is so much better at picking that up. Where he gets in trouble almost is when he has too much time, and then he's like, all right, well, I don't want to just take a 1-yard run here. I want to force something. And so I think the blitz is dangerous. And so that will be interesting to see how Todd Bowles dials that up and what he does. And Rhett, looking at that further for us Rams fans that don't really know the Bucs, what is the biggest strength of this Buccaneers defense? And what is the biggest weakness? Could be a whole system of it or a specific player.
Truthfully, I mean, when I look at the biggest strength of this defense, I look at the linebacker core. Evan's answer might be a little different than mine, but I think when Levante David and Devon White are both playing at the ability we know they can, exactly what happens against Philly. Levante David might not have been 100%. He wasn't running as fast as he was out there, but that's okay because number 45 was making up for it. Devon White in particular, he's been in the hot seat this season. I think fans were a little bit underwhelmed with his production in 2021. I mean, you look at his season last year, the dude had almost 10 sacks from the linebacker position. Like, that's pretty wild. So for him to only get, I think, 3 this year, and he had maybe 10 less tackles on the year, people were upset by that because that's just not the player he defined himself as being. But since the playoffs have come on, man, he's another one of those guys who has heard the criticisms and he has turned it on. But I think our defense revolves around them. I mean, when defending the pass, it's all about what those guys let go by them. If it's a short 5-yard route to Cooper Kupp, 9 times out of 10, unless the DB is right on top of him, Levante David's going to be the guy you want to make that tackle. Because if it goes any further and you got to rely on those DBs, that's when a 5-yard gain turns into a 10, 15, 20-yard gain, which the Bucs have been more than guilty of giving up this year as well. But when I look at the strengths, I think it is this linebacker core. I think it starts and ends with them, truthfully, especially when they are on it. Levante David being back is so valuable to this team. And I think the easy answer here to say their big weakness is their secondary, but they are playing healthy at the secondary for the first time in a very, very long time. I think this is the first time all season the Bucs have had just about every starting DB back on the roster. So between Carlton Davis, Mike Edwards, Jamel Dean, who is a little iffy this week, but I think he's going to give it a go. And whoever else they have back there. I know it's a weakness for this team, but those guys have been stepping it up a little bit too. I'm curious to hear what Evan thinks, though.
Yeah. Go ahead, Evan. And I'll phrase it to you also. Answer it fully, but then I'll phrase it to you to follow up. Who is a player, with Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyler Higbee, all these guys, who is a player that the Rams should go after and target, and then who should they stay away from? So that'll be kind of the follow-up on your full answer.
Yeah, so I think the strength of this defense is still the linebackers when they're on, right? But when they're off, that's when this defense really unravels. If Levante David, go ahead, Rhett.
Well, I was just going to say that's when the run defense unraveled this year. Is when Levante David missed all those games and Devon White couldn't do it by himself.
Yeah. So the linebackers, specifically in coverage, Devon White's strength is definitely not a coverage linebacker. That's more Levante David. Devon White's just the guy who you just want running straight line to the ball carrier. You don't want him playing in coverage too long. So that'll be important. But I do think that, the strength, when those two guys are on, this defense brings another level. And weakness, I'm going to put a little bit of like an asterisk next to it. But the defensive line, they're not healthy. They're not 100% healthy. Shaq Barrett's playing through an injury. Jason Pierre-Paul has been playing through a torn rotator cuff pretty much half this season. So both of those guys aren't very healthy. But specifically in this Rams matchup, they haven't been that good against the Rams offensive line. And that's going to be a key to stopping Matt Stafford from getting the ball to Odell or Cooper Kupp or Van Jefferson, Higbee, whoever it may be. Obviously the Rams don't have Robert Woods anymore, and they don't have Deshaun Jackson, who absolutely burned the Bucs in week 3, but they still have some talented guys. They're replaced it with Odell Beckham, who the Bucs didn't face last time. So I do think the defensive line, specifically the 2 edge rushers, I understand they're playing through injury, but it feels like they're going to have to step up a little bit. And like I said, if they were both healthy, it wouldn't be as much of a weakness. But I think in this particular game, that could be something the Rams exploit.
And just to put a bow on his point as well, I mean, not only is it up to the defensive line to get after Matt Stafford this week, but they have to do it with 4 guys, right? Because we talked about how Todd Bowles has to take a break from the blitz a little bit this week if they hope to have some good success in slowing down LA. And this Bucs defense, their defensive line, period. I mean, whether you have JPP or not, they definitely are not the best at putting pressure on the quarterback with just 4 linemen. So hopefully that's something they can overcome this week for our sake, not your sake. You know how it goes.
as far as the player that you might want to target, if I'm the Rams offensive coordinator, I take a look at that guy. If Sean Murphy Bunting plays, he's been questionable with a hamstring injury all week, so he might not be even 100% healthy. Sean Murphy Bunting has probably been the Bucs' worst corner. Jamel Dean gets a lot of criticism, but he's had like one of his best seasons as a Buck, and I don't really understand why he gets the criticism he does. And Carlton Davis is probably their best cover corner, but he struggled against Cooper Kupp, so I wouldn't put him against Cooper Kupp. But if you get a matchup you like, whether it's Odell, whether it's Van Jefferson, or even Cooper Kupp against Sean Murphy-Bunting, inside, outside, I think you got to exploit that. Not necessarily saying Murphy Bunting's a bad player. It's just, one, he might not be 100%, and two, he hasn't played as well as he could this season. And I think that the Bucs had a lot of success last week when he was out and they played Antoine Winfield in the nickel, Mike Edwards in the nickel a little bit. Mike Edwards had a pick. But, if Murphy Bunting's back there, they'll probably play him mostly in the nickel, and I think that's something the Rams can exploit.
Yeah, that's, I think, what they're going to target. I mean, Sean McVay's a pretty smart guy. And, with OC Kevin O'Connell, I think they know what they want to do. And it helps when you have so much talent they have. I mean, Cooper Kupp, they line up all over the field to get him. Basically, I mean, he's led the league in yak the last, 2-3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to just give him the ball at some point. And it was funny. I talked earlier in the week. Last year, through the third quarter, the Rams were up 20 points, and Cooper Kupp had 16 yards receiving. So I think it just showed how much the offense was dialed in last week. And if they can do that this week, but I think Cooper Kupp's going to have to be much more involved, and it'll be interesting that you mentioned the defensive line and watching those trenches. I don't know how much you guys knew, but Andrew Whitworth banged up. He's questionable for this game, has swelling in the ankle, but Joe Noteboom has played, phenomenal in his stead. He's had to play a few games this year with Whitworth out. So still a drop off. I think Big Whit's one of the best in the game, but Joe Noteboom has absolutely been a solid backup, and he'll be a starter probably next year if Whit does retire and they're able to retain Joe Noteboom. So that'll be interesting to watch. So, well, guys, let's get you out of here on this. Rhett, I'll start with you. Big game Sunday. I believe it's noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, I think. Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay. Should be, a lot of buzz, good weather. That's what I love too at this matchup. They don't have to go to Lambeau Field and play in the cold. We still get nice, warm, sunny weather. So it's good for the Rams, who don't seem to play well in the cold. Who do you like, Rhett? What are you taking? What's your prediction? What's your score?
I mean, call me a homer. This is going to be a tough game. This really is going to be a tough game. I think for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is their toughest game of the postseason this year, truthfully. Something about the Bucs-Packers matchup. I mean, it's not even a guarantee that they beat the 49ers here, but something about that matchup makes me feel a hell of a lot better than them playing the Rams. But I think it also helps them this week that they are at home. You get the 2 seed from up under LA's nose, and you get 2 home games. So I think that helps them this week, but it's a very, very close game. I do think it's a lot of scoring. Not quite as high as my first prediction I put out there, but I do have the Bucs taking this one by 3 points, 31-28, my final score. But this one really could go either way. It's going to probably come down to whoever has the ball last, in my opinion. I think it'll be a very memorable game.
There you go. So for bettors out there, Rhett has the Bucs pushing as they hit the 3-point spread. Evan, who you got?
Yeah, I've wrestled with this all week, and really I waited to see the status of Ryan Jensen and Tristan Wirfs. Because I'm going to be completely honest, if both those guys don't play, I don't think the Bucs stand a chance. I just don't think, So Rhett, real quick before I give mine, what are you assuming happens with those two guys?
I'm assuming Jensen plays. I'm assuming Tristan Wirfs does not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the way I'm leaning as well. I think they're hoping to just get out of this, and Wirfs will be back next week. But I do think Jensen will play, and Wirfs probably won't. So Josh Wells, and like I said, if both those guys don't play, I don't think the Bucs stand a chance. But if one of them do, I do think the Bucs can. There are ways, right, that you can try and neutralize those pass rushers. Rob Gronkowski, you can put him on Wells' side, have him maybe chip Von Miller every now and then, keep an extra back in to pass block as well. Man, I do think this is going to be a close game, and I agree with Rhett. This is probably toughest matchup that the Bucs could ask for. Honestly, I think out of all the matchups in the NFC, this is probably the team you didn't want to play because they just schematically they match up very well. Sean McVay has owned Todd Bowles, and Tom Brady struggled against the Rams defense the last 2 times he played, but. I'm gonna pick the Bucs just because mostly because they're at home. I think if this game was in LA, I think the Rams would win. But I do think that with the Bucs at home, I think that pushes it a little bit better. They've been a much better team at home than they have been on the road. I think that matters, specifically the defense. The defense has played much better at home than on the road. I think they're able to force, a turnover or two out of Matt Stafford. Stafford in the first game, I believe it was the first quarter, Stafford threw a ball right to Jamel Dean in his hands, and Jamel Dean dropped it. So you got to take advantage of your opportunities there. And Stafford, like you said, Ryan, he's averaged 12 to 15 picks a year. There's an opportunity there. He's going to put the ball. He's going to take some chances maybe. I think the Bucs win. I'm going to say 34-31. I think the Bucs somehow managed to put up 34 points with this banged up offense that they have. I think it's a big day for Rob Gronkowski, and I think Tom Brady rises to the occasion in the divisional round.
Yeah. Another push on the 3-point spread.
I know.
It's going to be such a good game. Anytime you get, Tom Brady in prime time in the playoffs, it's always fun. I agree with you guys. I love the matchup. I love it for the Rams, though. I think, again, I'd say homer pick too. I said it earlier at the top of the hour. I do like the Rams in this one. It's hard when you cover the team all year to pick against them in the playoffs, right? You don't want to be that guy that picks against them. Regular season, it's okay because whatever.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy, right, Evan?
Yeah.
Well, so he's referring to me. I did pick the Packers to beat the Bucs in last year's NFC Championship game, so that's what Rhett is referring to there.
I'll never forget.
Well, once the Bucs did reach the Super Bowl, I did pick the Bucs. I was like, you know what, whatever. So
you can't pick against them in the playoffs.
This game, I think, is going to be a coin flip. So any prediction, I don't really mind.
Yeah, I agree, and it's going to come. I think, just based on injury or health, I think the Rams are probably in a better spot. Still banged up too. I mean, they're missing both their starting safeties. Taylor Rapp still in the concussion protocol, but we saw how well. We didn't even talk about Eric Weddle, but he played pretty well off the couch. Nick Scott played great. Terrell Burgess played great. They're getting Ernest Jones back, so they're getting a little healthier in some aspects, missing others. So I think overall they're a little healthier. Really comes down to me if Matthew Stafford plays a clean game. If he plays a clean game, I think the Rams win. If he has that detrimental pick six, even an interception, I'm not worried about. If he has a pick six, that's where you run into issues, and he's had 4 of them this season. So, but should be a lot of fun. It's playoff football, baby. Can't wait, gentlemen. Got Evan Wanish at Evan NFL on Twitter. Rhett Matthew at Redicus. Spartan, but not a Buccaneer. That's okay. At Redicus on Twitter. Host of the Cannon Fire podcast. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me and breaking this down. Appreciate you both.
Absolutely, man.
And thanks for having us.
Yeah, tons of fun as always. Thank you for including myself and my better half this week.
Absolutely. Anytime. Good luck this weekend. Enjoy the game, and we'll definitely talk soon. All right. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the LA Football Show. Thank you to all of my guests, Sosa Kremenjas, Evan Wanish, Rhett Matthew. Thank you most of all to you, the listeners, for making this possible, for letting me do what I love and talking LA football with you. Huge game. Let's hope we continue moving on for our quest for a Super Bowl. Next week on the show, Monday, we'll recap the game. We'll get into some Chargers potential free agency talk and some more UCLA and USC news. Maybe we'll have a Caleb Williams decision by then. Quarterback. Maybe he'll be either on the USC Trojans or on the UCLA Bruins. Hopefully we'll know by Monday. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the Rams game. I'm Ryan Dyrud. I'm out. Peace.